Hello guys, Cultists here. The Alien franchise started with the single Xenomorph, however now there are over 100 types and variants of this nightmarish creature. So today I'll cover every single Xenomorph in the Alien expanded universe, exploring bizarre and obscure types from movies, video games and comics. And some of them are truly massive, so we're gonna go from the smallest to the largest known Xenomorph types that are absolutely colossal. The X-Sacs. The smallest Xeno creature is the X-Sacs from Alien Covenant, which initiate the creation of an alien organism. The X-Sacs are the result of plants' mutation with the pathogen spread by David on Planet 4. The X-Sacs release tiny pores that grow inside a host into Neomorphs, an interesting Xenomorph type that we'll discuss later in the video. T-Ocellus. T-Ocellus is an octopus-like creature from Alien Earth series that replaces the host's eye and invades the brain. Weyland-Yutani scientists provide the following description after studying it. T-Ocellus can grow or retract at will. The tentacles carry extraordinary strength and are built to climb into and dislodge the eyes of other living organisms. Once replaced in the eye socket, T-Ocellus takes over the ocular pathway to the brain, overriding neurotransmissions throughout the body. So essentially, T-Ocellus is an advanced brain-controlling parasite. Interestingly, it has exactly 7 tentacles, just like the trilobite from Prometheus, possibly indicating that these parasites are related or both come from the same star system. The Plumbicare. The second organism in the Alien Earth series is the Plumbicare, which is a flesh-eating plant. It's described as a 7-foot pod that lures prey with secreted fluids. Test notes report that animals given to the Plumbicare expire by one of 3 means: asphyxiation, dissolution, or exhaustion. However, the Plumbicare also consumes people, as there appears to be a human face stretching out from underneath. Also, when conditions become inhospitable or threat to survival, the Plumbicare closes completely. Just like with T-Ocellus, the exact origins of the plant are unknown, but it could very well be from Planet 4, where David spread the pathogen which made many plants carnivorous. There are also 2 more creatures in the Alien Earth series, and as of episode 2, it's not clear if they are related to Xenomorphs, but it's still worth mentioning them. The Insectoid. Weyland-Yutani's ship also recovered a flying insectoid Xeno creature that could be seen in one of the teasers. The creature has some Xenomorph traits, but also has a distinct insect-style abdomen. However, the most mysterious and dangerous creature from Alien Earth is the Specimen 37. Specimen 37 appears in the gruesome gestation video and is probably a distant Xenomorph hybrid with anatomy and surface textures reminiscent of the species. It also develops in a cocoon, yet emerges fully formed and remains clearly distinct from a true Xenomorph. However, the most interesting thing is that its DNA is described as completely unknown, suggesting an extremely ancient lineage possibly tied to a space jockey species separate from the engineers. Species 37 is described to be enormous, about 7 meters tall and 6 meters wide, and is still rapidly growing, making it 3 times larger than a Xenomorph. So it will be really interesting to see this giant monster in full height and might, which will probably happen in the finale of the Earth series. However, before the emergence of giant Xenomorphs and space jockey variants, it all started with the egg or the ovomorph, which is the first alien life form that we encounter in the original Alien of 1979. The ovomorph is an egg-like capsule that contains a facehugger. These eggs are produced and laid by a queen. Xenomorph eggs are often seen as inert vessels for facehuggers, but in reality they are complex organisms that exist in a symbiotic relationship with the facehugger. These eggs can detect nearby hosts, causing petals to open and release the facehugger. Typically containing 1 facehugger, but sometimes up to 4, an egg and its occupant weigh around 60 pounds. Ovomorphs can sustain facehuggers for centuries without external nutrients. The longevity of eggs is due to energy-generating acid blood into stable salts that decay slowly. It is unknown whether an empty egg can produce more facehuggers. However, the fact that spent eggs are typically found hollow and empty suggests that it is extremely unlikely. Dissection of eggs reveals that they have a basic central nervous system linked to thermo and pressure-sensitive veins on their surface, enabling them to detect nearby hosts. It's suggested that the egg's skin may have sensory organs for distant host detection, allowing the facehugger to orient and assess host viability accurately. In the original Alien of 1979, some eggs appear almost transparent, suggesting that the outer shell might allow for visibility of the internal facehugger. The true origin of the eggs, however, remains one of the biggest mysteries. It appears that David created the first Xenomorph egg, or at least a version of them in Alien Covenant. There's also evidence suggesting that he designed his Xenomorph egg based on another ancient egg he discovered on Planet 4. When a host is detected, the egg releases a catalyst that frees stored acids, transferring energy to the facehugger, which becomes live at this point. The ovomorph sacrifices its bioelectrical potential to activate the facehugger for attack. The egg's top then splits open to release the facehugger. The facehugger represents the second stage in the xenomorph life cycle and exists solely to implant the xenomorph embryo into a living host through the mouth. Despite lacking real offensive capabilities, the facehugger relies on stealth, surprise, or immobilized victims to achieve implantation. Facehuggers are deceptively strong, possessing extreme strength for their size, often requiring several people to prevent them from impregnating a host. Notably, a facehugger dies shortly after completing its task. The facehugger and the egg are technically two separate organisms that exist in complete symbiosis until the facehugger separates. Visually, the facehugger resembles skeletal hands with a spine-like tail and 8 finger-like legs for rapid crawling and leaping. A facehugger's long, strong digits enable rapid movement and a firm grip on a host's head, making removal nearly impossible and ensuring implantation. Its tail helps in leaping and additional grip, sometimes strangling hosts, and the potent acid blood further complicates the removal. When a facehugger senses a nearby host, it leaps at the host's face, wrapping its tail around their neck. It then renders the host unconscious with a paralytic chemical causing vivid and distressing dreams. Interestingly, the facehugger doesn't actually implant an infant xenomorph. Instead, it deposits a mutagenic substance called plagiaris prepotens into the host's esophagus. This mutagen restructures the host's cells, causing the host's body to form the chestburster from its own biological material. And it's actually no coincidence that facehugger's limbs resemble human fingers, and the creature's face is similar to other human organs. Alien Covenant strongly implies that the first facehuggers were assembled from bones, organs, and reproductive tissues of Dr. Elizabeth Shaw, and grown using her eggs and ovaries. The deleted scene shows that David harvested her organs and created a new organism by gluing everything together with a highly mutagenic black goo pathogen that jump-started the newly formed creature and gave it life. Once a facehugger leaves the egg, Weyland-Yutani notes state that they have a hard ceiling of about 5 Earth days to live. During that window, it runs on a fixed glucose and lipid reserve laid down while dormant. Field logs confirm that facehuggers prioritize heat differentials over motions. They detect targets as infrared silhouettes first, audible respiration second, and visual shape last. While it is possible to remove facehuggers before embryo implantation, the procedure is usually fatal for the host. The Royal Facehugger. The Royal Facehugger is a facehugger variant which has the ability to deposit a queen embryo. It's one in a hive variant bred to start a new colony. At the end of the movie Aliens, the queen deposited an egg with a Royal Facehugger after her colony was nuked by Ripley. The Royal Facehugger has webbed, flipper-like digits and tougher claws and is able to implant multiple embryos. It actually only appears in Alien 3 Special Edition, and it was able to implant Ripley with an alien queen and later an ox with a regular embryo. The Octaface Hugger. The Octaface Hugger, or an ancient facehugger, is a deleted creature from Prometheus. In the early Prometheus script called Alien Engineers, instead of ampules, the Engineer Temple contained sacs of these Octaface Huggers. And in that original script, one of them impregnated Holloway, who then spawned the beluga Xenomorph while in bed with Shaw, which was a really gruesome scene. The Trilobite. There's also the Trilobite born from Dr. Elizabeth Shaw after the black goo exposure, and it functions as a giant facehugger big enough to grapple an engineer. Initially, the Trilobite was slightly smaller than a facehugger, but it quickly became absolutely massive, almost as big as the offspring of Romulus. Interestingly, Shaw was initially infertile, however. After Holloway was infected with the black goo, she was able to become pregnant with an alien fetus. It's not clear whether the Holloway seed became more potent or the black goo simply adapted to her reproductive system. But within a day, the fetus grew to the size of a baby and looked like an octopus once emerged. The Trilobite later attacked the engineer, either because he was nearby or because I speculate the Trilobite wanted to protect its mother, Elizabeth Shaw. It then implanted a deacon embryo just like all the other facehuggers, and this later led to the emergence of the deacon creature, which we'll get to later in the video. The Hammerpede. The Hammerpede is an aggressive organism formed when native worms on LV223 mutated after exposure to the black goo. The Hammerpede cannot implant a xenomorph embryo, but is sometimes considered an early iteration of a facehugger. Also in the 90s, Kenner's toy line imagined wing-webbed giant facehuggers that could glide or swim. The Snake Alien. Another insane Kenner toy variant is the Snake Alien. It has a classic xenomorph head but no arms or legs, but possesses a powerful tail which allows it to grab victims and move. The Snake Alien became popular from the Kenner toys and later appeared in the comics. It has a cobra-like hood that can spit acid, and it grows to about the same height as the regular xenomorph. After the facehugger embryo grows and gets big enough, which can take hours or minutes depending on the host and other conditions, the chestburster erupts from the host's chest. The chestburster is not a separate organism, but rather an infant form of the xenomorph species that is infamous for its gruesome gestation process. As it matures, it violently bursts from the host's chest, causing a bloody and traumatic death. Typically small, chestbursters resemble large worms that are usually beige or brown, with metallic teeth in the tail for swift movement. Chestbursters incorporate about 25% of the host's genetic material, allowing them to adapt to their environment and evade the host's immune system. This genetic assimilation causes physical variations in adult xenomorphs such as the Yautja mandibles and Predelian chestbursters. The emergence of a chestburster causes severe trauma, organ rupture, and massive blood loss, leading to a swift but excruciatingly painful death. The chestburster stage is the xenomorph's most vulnerable. Despite rapid growth, these infants are almost defenseless and rely on their acidic blood for protection. Although they can attack humans, they typically hide until they reach maturity. After emerging, chestbursters quickly grow into adult xenomorphs, with the alien on the Nostromo reaching adulthood within hours. Chestbursters typically seek hiding places and consume organic materials and raw metals to increase their mass, shedding their skin repeatedly as they grow. While the birthing process is fatal, there have been instances where removing a chestburster before emergence leaves the host unharmed. The most famous example is the removal of an alien queen embryo from Ripley 8 in Alien Resurrection. There are also 3 known chestburster variants. The first is the Predelian chestburster from the AVP movies, which is a Yautja xenomorph hybrid. Even at birth, it already has predator mandibles and eventually grows into the full Predelian. There is also the Neo chestburster that will eventually grow into the Neomorph. An interesting variant is the Protomorph chestburster from Alien Covenant. Unlike regular chestbursters with beige and worm-like body, the Protomorph chestburster looks a lot more like a smaller version of the adult xenomorph with pronounced dome and limbs. David recreating the xenomorph from scratch resulted in slight differences from the regular xenomorphs. However, after emergence, all chestburster types find a quiet corner where they can hide and create a cocoon, as the one we saw in Alien Romulus. Inside of the cocoon, the chestburster presumably consumes materials from the ship, synthesizing metals, carbon fibers, and other industrial compounds into its own body in a very rapid growth spurt. Once the growth is complete, the adult xenomorph emerges from the cocoon, which leads us to the classic xenomorph. The xenomorph, commonly known as the alien and classified as XX-121, is an extremely aggressive extraterrestrial species. These predatory creatures have one and only goal, which is the propagation of their species and the destruction of any other life form they encounter along their path. Similar to wasps or bees, xenomorphs are hive creatures with a queen breeding numerous subordinate castes. They are known for their potent acidic blood and secondary inner jaws, but their defining characteristic is their gruesome life cycle. Besides their frequent conflicts with humans, xenomorphs are closely associated with the Yautja. The Yautja regard xenomorphs as highly dangerous and worthy prey, using them in initiation hunts to test young members of their society and mark their transition into adulthood, which is explored in AVP movies. Xenomorphs have a durable exoskeleton, blade-tipped tails, and biomechanical appearance, which allows them to seamlessly merge with the ship's interior. When standing upright, xenomorphs have a roughly bipedal appearance. They are incredibly strong, able to break through metal and wielded steel doors effortlessly, but their main weapon is their inner jaw, which can extend from their mouth with piston-like force capable of piercing through bone and metal. Xenomorphs adapt their physical appearance during development based on their host's physiology. Despite their seemingly fragile construction, their tails are powerful weapons capable of implanting and lifting a Yautja. These tails are used for stabbing, slashing, and blunt force trauma. Lacking traditional eyes, xenomorphs have sensory structures on their heads to detect vibrations, and their elongated skull functions as a biological sonar using echolocation to scan their surroundings. Their blood is a highly potent molecular acid, yellowish-green in color, and capable of corroding almost any substance on contact. This acidic blood acts as a component of a biological battery that powers the creature and is pressurized to sprout out defensively when wounded. The level of xenomorph sentience and intelligence is debated, but they exhibit some form of communication that synchronizes them with the queen. XX-121 is a xenomorph spawned from humans. However, in the alien universe, xenomorphs spawned from a large variety of hosts inheriting parts of their DNA. And this is where we get to some truly strange and terrifying crossbreeds that we're going to explore in depth. In comic books, animal hosts spawned a few exotic xenomorphs like the bull alien, the gorilla alien, the rhino alien, the mantis alien, and the winter beast xenomorph spawned from an alien spider. All these xenomorph variants inherited different traits of their animal hosts. A really notable animal variant is the crocodile alien. It's a massive xenomorph variant born from a crocodile host. This creature resulted when an alien infested the swampy jungles of Guatemala and used a large crocodile as a host, producing an especially gigantic and powerful xenomorph. The tail of the crocodile alien is exceptionally long and tipped with a large spiked blade. This xenomorph type is about 20 feet tall and is not only larger than a queen, but is also much bulkier. The Animan xenomorphs. There are also the Animan xenomorphs, which are 4 animal-human hybrids created by Dr. Neil Rainstad. Dr. Rainstad bioengineered sentient human-animal hybrids and then impregnated them with xenomorphs. The resulting xenomorph hybrid included deer alien, bear alien, rhinoceros alien, and the elephanto-humanoid hybrid xenomorph, which looked particularly strange. The 4-armed xenomorph. Neil Blomkamp's 4-armed xenomorph comes from the concept art he produced in 2014 for his ultimately cancelled Alien 5 project. In these images, the alien keeps the classic elongated skull, inner jaws, and biomechanical look of Geiger's original Big Chap. However, that Xenomorphs also has an extra set of smaller secondary arms sprouting just below the primary pair. Blomkamp imagined those mid-torso limbs as fast grapplers that could pin victims while the upper arms delivered lethal blows or dragged bodies away for cocooning. Although Alien 5 was shelved when Alien Covenant moved forward, the artwork cemented the four-armed Xenomorph as a fan favorite what if. However, the most notable animal Xenomorph hybrid is the Runner Xenomorph from Alien 3, which has a really controversial backstory. Normally, Xenomorphs inherit traits of the host animals, so the larger the host, the larger the Xenomorph. In Alien 3, the Xenomorph is relatively small, probably half of the size of the classic Xenomorph, despite the fact that it spawned from a bull, a particularly large animal. Well, the reason the Runner Xenomorph is so small is because in the initial cut of the movie, the host for this alien was actually a dog. However, that scene was later replaced by the bull in the Ultimate Edition, which just illustrates how messy the production for Alien 3 actually was. Besides animal hybrids, another crucial element of the Xenomorph is their hive social hierarchy, which gives rise to a few bizarre Xenomorphs culminating in a queen as the ultimate ruler of the hive. Xenomorph drones or warriors serve as soldiers and are distinguished by an exoskeleton with rigged head carapaces. Warriors often capture human prey alive to serve as hosts for new Xenomorphs. They also exhibit hive-driven behavior like swarming attacks when in groups. The Ptorian, also known as the Royal Guard, represents one of the final stages in the traditional Xenomorph life cycle. When a hive's population exceeds 300 individuals, the queen selects several Xenomorphs to be fed royal jelly, which transforms them into Ptorians. These formidable creatures are larger and stronger than regular Xenomorphs, but still smaller than the queen. Ptorians serve as commanders of the hive and primary protectors of the queen, ensuring her safety and maintaining order among the other Xenomorphs. The Crusher, mainly featured in video games, is an advanced stage of the Xenomorph life cycle, evolving from the Ptorian. Crushers share similar traits with Ptorians, but are even larger and stronger, characterized by a massive head crest used to deliver devastating blunt force trauma. Video games also introduce additional Xenomorph castes that fulfill various functions within a hive. The Carrier Alien. Carrier Alien is a specialized Xenomorph breed evolved from Ptorians and is adapted to transport facehuggers on their backs. They can carry up to 12 facehuggers, releasing them to overwhelm enemies from a distance. The Ravager Xenomorph. Ravager is a massive Xenomorph with huge bladed forearms evolved for pure offense. They are formed from upgraded Ptorians and are among the most powerful Xenomorph types in open combat. Raven. The Raven Xenomorph seen in Aliens Colonial Marines is a one-of-a-kind apex warrior that diverges from the standard Ptorian line. Standing over twice the height of a drone, it features an exceptionally thick cranial shield that resists small arms fire, allowing it to act as a living shield in narrow passages. The Spitter from Colonial Marines and Aliens Fireteam Elite is a specialized drone variant that projects corrosive acid onto intruders in the hive. Then there are Bustlers or Boilers that appear in several games as self-destruct based Xenomorph. Their head and dorsal sacs swell with pressurized acid, and on death or deliberate detonation they explode, flooding the area with lethal acid spray to deny grounds to hive intruders. There's also the Prowler, whose purpose is the ambush as their long limbs and flexible spines enable silent perching in vents. However, all regular Xenomorphs, Ptorians, Crushers, and other castes are subordinate to and controlled by the Alien Queen, who serves as the mother and leader of the Xenomorph hive. The Queen is the largest, strongest, and the most intelligent Xenomorph seen on screen. The Queen's appearance significantly differs from smaller variants. Typically stationary within the hive, queens are primary egg layers since their massive ovipositor renders them immobile. Queens are notably more intelligent than regular Xenomorphs, exhibiting traits of Wraith and Vengeance, problem-solving skills, and the ability to issue commands to subordinate castes. Physically, they stand around 5 meters tall, twice the height of the most xenomorphs, with older queens growing even larger. Their thick mesoskeleton and additional armor allow them to withstand extensive gunfire. The exact process of a queen's creation is unknown. In the novelization of Aliens, Bishop theorizes that the introduction of royal jelly at the egg stage may lead to the creation of a queen, similar to how honeybee queens are created. This suggests that a queen is determined from the earliest stages of its life cycle. This theory is supported in Alien 3, where Ripley was impregnated by a royal face hugger capable of implanting a special alien queen embryo in a host. However, the 2010 AVP video game presents a different perspective. In the game, Specimen 6 evolves into a queen from a Ptorian stage, indicating that a xenomorph can transform into a queen later in its life cycle under certain conditions. This variation highlights the complexity and adaptability of the xenomorph species. Which leads us to the Predelian and the Predelian Queen. The Predelian is a hybrid xenomorph born from a Yautja host featured across AVP films, comics, and games. It retains the alien's acidic blood and inner jaws, yet inherits predator traits such as mandibles, dread-like cranial tendrils, and a broader, more muscular frame. The Predelian is larger than both of its parent species. Predelians also have superior strength, resilience, and often overpower standard xenomorph drones in close combat. True to its Yautja lineage, it also shows a trophy hunting drive. Predelians are intelligent, but not to the point that they can use Yautja technology. Instead, they use sheer brute force and instinct to claim victims, which makes them one of the most formidable hybrids in the franchise. The Predelian Queen. The Predelian is mainly featured in the AVP Requiem, and in that movie, the Predelian is actually molting into a Predelian Queen. Born from the Predator Scar at the end of the first AVP film, it molted aboard a Yautja ship, killed several Yautja, and crashed the vessel into Gunnison, Colorado, to seed a new hive under its command. Predator biomasks register it as a bright yellow EM signature rather than the usual neon green of human-spawned xenomorphs. Instead of the ovipositor, the Predelian Queen uses an interim method called belly bursting. It locks its inner jaw down a victim's throat and regurgitates up to 5 ready-made embryos, greatly speeding up the hive growth by skipping the egg and facehugger stages. This ability, confirmed by the movie director, is unique to juvenile predator queens, and it lets them spawn a small xenomorph pack until they can molt into mature egg-laying form. However, an alien queen can eventually evolve into the Empress, an obscure stage in the xenomorph life cycle that briefly appears in video games. The most famous example is the Matriarch or the Ancient Queen from the 2010 AVP game. The game features a millennia-old Empress whose once black exoskeleton has faded to a cracked pale gray. Empresses are physically larger and superior to regular queens, often ruling over multiple queens and their respective hives. However, they are subordinate to the Queen Mother. The Queen Mother, also known as the Mother Queen or Hive Mother, is the supreme controlling force of the xenomorph species, encountered only on Xenomorph Prime. Queen Mothers are enormous in size, and they rule over equally massive hives, often spanning over continents or entire planets, and they are believed to control every xenomorph within their domain. But due to their rare appearance and obscurity, Queen Mothers remain somewhat inconsistent in their portrayal. In the comic book Earthward, there is an alternate timeline in which Ripley travels to the Xenomorph homeworld, kidnaps the Queen Mother, and lures all Xenomorphs to one spot to end a planet-wide outbreak on Earth. And this led to the emergence of the Red Xenomorphs. The Red Xenomorphs are a red-skinned strain that erupted on the Xenomorph homeworld when the primary Queen Mother was abducted, shattering her psychic hold over the planet-wide hive. The Red Queen Mother. A rival Red Queen Mother quickly evolved to lead this new strain, sparking a civil war with the traditional black breed. Physically, the red xenomorphs mirror standard warriors but display blood-red exoskeletons and secrete a chemically distinct royal jelly prized by human corporations. In the comic book Alien Genocide, a well-Yutani strike force exploits the conflict, detonating a tactical nuclear weapon that kills the Red Queen Mother and annihilates her breed, so that the company can safely harvest royal jelly from the surviving Black Hive. With the Red Queen Mother gone, the Red Xenomorph line is believed to be extinct, leaving only relics and collector's figures to mark their brief but violent divergence from the main species. But what's really interesting is that the first ever alien queen is possibly Elizabeth Shaw, the first alien queen. Concept arts and David's sketches for Alien Covenant strongly hint that Dr. Elizabeth Shaw became the prototype queen, a human xenomorph hybrid mother David used to create the first eggs. David's drawings depict Shaw dissected and fused with biomechanical tubing and her abdominal cavity re-engineered to nurture embryonic sacs. And one sketch is even captioned Queen. Also in the movie we can see a Geiger-esque scene of Shaw's head surrounded by tubes as if she was mutating into something, perhaps the first xenomorph. In the Blu-ray deleted scene, David admits that he salvaged her parts to begin work on his masterpiece, crediting Shaw's human genome for unlocking new properties in the creature he perfected. Another batch of drawings reveals that he may have harvested her eggs and cultured them into facehugger embryos, effectively turning Shaw's own biology into the ovomorphs later found in the lab. While the finished film shows only her corpse, these behind-the-scenes materials support the theory that Shaw functioned as a morphed living incubator, the first step toward a true queen, bridging human and alien DNA in David's quest to create the perfect organism. Which leads us to the prequels with many other xenomorph types that are truly bizarre. The five-field xenomorph. In Prometheus, Fifield had grotesque mutations as the result of the contact with the black goo. However, an alternate scene features the five-field xenomorph, a deleted five-field black goo mutation. Its limbs were elongated, its back arched like a runner, and its swollen, semi-translucent head echoed the classic smooth xenomorph dome while still retaining hints of Fifield's face. The initial aim was to show the pathogen literally reshaping human tissue into something partway to a xenomorph rather than just grotesquely deforming it. Five-field xenomorph attacks the Prometheus hangar with inhuman speed, snapping spines and shrugging off gunfire before being crushed under the rover. However, there was another truly disturbing deleted creature from Prometheus. The beluga head. The beluga head is a small, grotesque organism just 4 feet tall with slender legs that was supposed to evolve into the beluga xenomorph. The beluga head appeared in early Prometheus script Alien Engineers but was cut before filming. After the ancient facehugger infected Holloway, the creature gestated inside of him and emerged while he was in bed with Shaw. The creature was conceived to possess long skinny legs, small black eyes, and an acid ball organ inside its mouth. And then the beluga head would eventually evolve into the beluga xenomorph. The beluga xenomorph, or the Holloway alien, is the adult form of this ghost pale variant. It was envisioned as an ivory white, almost boneless organism whose soft, gelatinous body could squeeze through tight vents in the ship's corridors. Concept art shows a head shaped like a beluga whale's melon, lidless eyes, and a tapering eel-like torso, an eerie contrast to the biomechanical hardness of the classic xenomorph. Although the beluga xenomorph never appeared on screen, the design survives in Huante's concept arts. The Deacon. The Deacon, seen only in the closing moments of Prometheus, is a xenomorph-like creature born when a giant trilobite facehugger implanted an embryo in the surviving engineer. The Deacon erupts fully formed from the engineer's chest, standing upright with dark blue skin, no visible tail, and a long pointed head from which its name is derived. The Deacon's exact biology, such as whether it has acidic blood, remains unclear, marking it as an evolutionary cousin rather than a direct ancestor to the xenomorph. Expanded comics later imply that the creature survived on LV-223 and, under the black goo pathogen, grew into a colossal mountain-sized organism. Based on the mural in the LV-223 temple, engineers used to worship the deacons, or maybe a non-violent and more sentient version of them that existed a long time ago. Eldon is probably the weirdest black goo mutation. Eldon was initially synthetic, just like David, who later mutated from the black goo. When embarked on an expedition to LV-223 in the aftermath of Prometheus, scientist Francis Lane injected Eldon with a dose of the black goo. Because the accelerant carries xenomorph genetic material, Eldon rapidly turned into a functional xenomorph offshoot. He grew bone-white armor, dorsal tendrils that matured into extra limbs, and emitted pheromones that let him command nearby aliens, which treated him as a part of the hive. But what's particularly interesting is that in the climax of Fire and Stone Omega, Eldon fused his mutable body with a colossal pathogen-grown living mountain, who was actually an overgrown deacon mentioned earlier. Eldon was absorbed into the living structure's biomass and wasn't able to separate, so his fate remains unknown. The Deacon Shark. The Deacon Shark is a massive aquatic xenomorph-like creature encountered on LV-223 in the Fire and Stone comics. It likely evolved when a native sea animal was mutated by the black goo, resulting in a shark with xenomorph traits such as inner jaw, biomechanical textures, and extreme aggression. The creature was nicknamed the Deacon Shark due to its jaw structure resembling the Deacon. However, the naming here is really ironic since the original Deacon's design was itself inspired by a goblin shark with an extendable jaw. The Ultramorph. The Ultramorph was the original engineer-born xenomorph conceived for Alien Engineer's script before the creature was replaced by the smaller Deacon in Prometheus. Spawning from an engineer, the Ultramorph would have stood about 15 feet tall. Its albino gray coloring and ripped tubing is inherited from the engineer's biomechanical pressure suits. On top of that, in its chestburster stage, it was already as big as a wolf as mentioned in the early script. In the script's climax, the fully grown Ultramorph emerges from the Juggernaut, hunts the last survivor, Elizabeth Shaw, and seeds the derelict with eggs, setting up the ovomorph cargo seen in Alien of 1979 and thus closing the narrative loop. However, the studio then steered Prometheus away from explicit xenomorph imagery, so the Ultramorph sequence was scrapped, leaving only concept art and script pages to show what might have been, a towering prehistoric prototype that would have connected the engineers directly to the classic egg chamber on LV-426. However, the sequel to Prometheus, Alien Covenant, features two other types of xenomorphs encountered on the planet 4. The Neomorph. The Neomorph is a pathogen-born offshoot seen on Planet 4, and it shares the xenomorph's rapid gestation but diverges sharply in behavior and anatomy. After the black goo-altered spores infiltrate a human host, a Neomorph embryo develops inside, culminating in a violent and gruesome eruption. Adult Neomorphs stand slightly above human height with smooth pale gray skin and cone-shaped skull. However, they lack both the biomechanical ribbing and inner jaw of a true xenomorph, giving them a more human-like and almost fetal appearance. In the movie, we can notice that Neomorphs are photophobic as bright lights and flashes make them recoil and flee. The Neomorph also ignored David when he approached, sniffing him, then backing away, suggesting that they respond to chemical or pheromonal clues and did not perceive the android as prey. On top of that, their blood is pale green and only mildly corrosive. Neomorphs reproduce solely through spores from egg sacs mentioned earlier, so they operate as solitary predators rather than hive builders. The Protomorph. The Protomorph is the xenomorph variant David bred on Planet 4 by merging the engineer's black goo pathogen with tissues harvested from Shaw and dead engineers. In the Alien Covenant novelization, David explains that he first discovered a fossilized alien egg in the ruined citadel. He then replicated its biology, reverse engineering it with the pathogen's xenomorph DNA to grow on his own elongated eggs. These eggs hatch facehuggers that yield adult creatures almost identical to the classic xenomorph, yet missing its biomechanical ribbing, tubing, and the polished dome. Their behavior is also remarkably more feral, rushing prey head-on rather than relying on stealth. David viewed this creature as an intermediate step toward his perfect organism, but even in this draft state, the protomorph proved lethal enough to wipe out most of the Covenant's landing party. We still don't know what David did with 2 xenomorph embryos and 2,000 colonists after Covenant, but it's assumed that David would finish his experiments, which would eventually lead to the classic xenomorph that would terrorize the Nostromo. The Earth Angel Xenomorph. The Earth Angel Xenomorph is an unusual xenomorph type from the comics set in the 50s. When an extraterrestrial craft crashes in a small town in America, locals discover an alien pilot already impregnated by a facehugger. They bring the alien to a doctor, and moments later a chestburster erupts and escapes into a nearby forest. The creature then grows into a huge xenomorph larger than human-spawned aliens. The Earth Angel builds a hive in the forest and kills an outlaw biker gang before locals and Ellen Ripley's grandfather destroy it with fire and explosives. However, the newest and the most unusual xenomorph type is the Alpha Xenomorph. The Alpha Xenomorph is an unusually large, horn-crested alien that functions as a field commander when no queen is present. Introduced in Marvel's comic Alien Bloodlines, it emerged from a human mixed with goat extraterrestrial DNA. Yeah, kinda weird. The result was the Alpha Xenomorph, standing 15 feet tall with bull-like horns, thick dorsal spines, and a dense head crest. Lore suggests that an alpha develops only under special stress when a hive is queenless or cut off from her pheromonal commands. Then one warrior molts into this elevated form to maintain order until a new queen can arise. Because the alpha cannot lay eggs, it's an evolutionary stopgap, an interim monarch that wields size, intelligence, and ferocity to keep the hive functioning. Although it's probably a tragedy that Disney got a hold of the Alien franchise. A Marvel comic introduced probably the most mysterious and enigmatic xenomorph type that takes the alien lore to a whole new level. The Xenomorph Goddess. The Xenomorph Goddess, also called the Woman in the Dark, is a crown-horned biomechanical female entity introduced in Alien Bloodlines. Survivors who have been face-hugged describe seeing her during impregnation and later in recurring nightmares. They describe her as a towering figure with blind, cloudy eyes who will someday reduce all life to gore and ash. This mysterious entity haunts their nightmares and seems to exert a psychological influence on them, reflecting the primal fear and awe that humans feel toward the xenomorphs. Visions of the goddess reoccur across hosts, implying a shared psychic space tied to the xenomorph hive mind. Weyland-Yutani agent Iris Humphreys calls her the inevitable end result of humanity discovering Prometheus' fire, suggesting that she embodies the species' apocalyptic destiny. Physically, the goddess resembles H.I. Giger's painting The Spell 2, slender with elongated fingers and ram-like horns, and she may draw power from the same pheromonal network queens use to command hives. The later miniseries Alien Icarus shows a mutated survivor identified as Lee evolving into a tangible form that matches the nightmarish figure of the Xenomorph Goddess surrounded by xenomorphs, hinting that the goddess can manifest when the right genetic and environmental triggers align. Whether she is a literal apex cast, a psychic projection, or both remains unresolved. But within Marvel canon, she stands above queens and alphas as a mythic controller, a goddess among maggots who haunts and guides the hive toward a galaxy-cleansing purpose. The Irradiated Xenomorph. Another interesting variant is the Irradiated Xenomorph, which is a mutant encountered in the Aliens Aftermath comic. This unusual variant resulted from exposure to extreme radiation. In the ruins of Hadley's Hope on LV-426, Marines discovered that at least one xenomorph survived the processor's nuclear explosion in Aliens. The creature have been heavily irradiated and mutated over time. The xenomorph glowed with an eerie whitish light and had an extremely cold aura. Its body acted like liquid nitrogen, freezing anything it touched. However, the latest movie Alien Romulus features one of the most horrifying hybrids, the Offspring. The Offspring's origin is more convoluted than most hybrid creatures. Scientists in the Romulus lab attempted to replicate the black goo pathogen. After recovering the classic Big Chap xenomorph, they used its genetic material to bioengineer cloned facehuggers. They then extracted mutagenic compounds that were refined into an experimental fluid Z01 that the android nicknamed Prometheus Fire, implying that this is a copy of the Prometheus black goo. When the pregnant and mortally wounded Kay injected herself with this serum, her fetus mutated within minutes. First, an egg-like sac formed. From it emerged what looked like a human infant, but within moments the child expanded into a terrifying 17-foot engineer xenomorph hybrid. It displayed immediate extreme aggression, killing and consuming Kay almost as soon as it stood. The creature possessed a long spiked tail, dorsal tubes, metallic teeth, and an extendable, flexible inner jaw inherited from the alien lineage. It was all combined with a bald head, pale skin, and black eyes reminiscent of the engineers. However, deleted concept art shows an even more grotesque evolution. The offspring would have continued mutating into a giant albino xenomorph, its human face peeling back like a torn wrapping to reveal a full alien dome beneath. Another xenomorph variant often overlooked is the Electric Xenomorph from Alien Romulus. If we look closely at the footage, we can see faint electrical arcs coursing inside its translucent dome. While the creature was in the cocoon stage, Bjorn jammed an electrical prod into it, continuously shocking it during growth. Because the Xenomorph's chrysalis assimilates materials and energies around the cocoon, the developing alien incorporated the electricity into its own biology. So the resulting adult Xenomorph resembles the classic big chap in every aspect except one. Visible electric currents now pulse through its skull. Ripley 8. Ripley 8 is the 8th and first viable clone of Ellen Ripley. She was grown aboard the USS Auriga from a blood sample recovered after Ripley's death on Fiorina 161 in Alien 3. Scientists on the Auriga initially wanted pure xenomorph DNA, and they tried getting it by cloning Ripley. Since Ripley had a queen embryo inside her before dying, the plagiarist prepotence mutagen from Facehugger left traces of xenomorph DNA in Ripley's blood, so the cloning process yielded a host with the alien inside. After the procedure, the alien queen was indeed extracted from Ripley 8's chest, but the process left some unexpected consequences. Ripley's genes subtly cross-mixed with the queen's. As a result, Ripley 8 is effectively a human xenomorph hybrid. She retains Ripley's memories and appearance, but exhibits enhanced strength, reflexes, and senses, slightly acidic blood, rapid healing, and a pheromonal bond that lets her sense and even control other xenomorphs. The cloned alien queen. The cloned queen extracted from Ripley 8 was itself a genetic hybrid. While the military scientists aboard the Auriga succeeded in removing the queen embryo to mass-produce xenomorphs for weapons and research, the cloning process resulted in Ripley's human DNA intertwined with the alien genome. This subtle cross-contamination altered the queen's physiology, granting her a secondary mammal-style reproductive system alongside the standard ovipositor. So instead of relying on eggs and facehuggers, the hybrid queen carried a human fetus to term and delivered the newborn, an unprecedented xenomorph human chimera. The newborn is a truly terrifying variant that stands about 14 feet tall with pale, leathery skin, a partially human skull, a pair of eyes, and a muscular bipedal frame. It retains the classic xenomorph head shape and corrosive blood, but has a disturbingly human-like face with sunken eye sockets and a twisted nose, making this variant especially terrifying. Emotionally, the newborn imprints on Ripley 8 as its true mother, displays curiosity and rudimentary affection, yet turns instantly violent, killing its biological mother, the alien queen, and several crew members with overwhelming strength. The newborn existence underscores the unpredictable outcomes of human-xenomorph genetic mingling. Now that we've covered the most popular types and common variants, let's turn to the more obscure and unusual types found in video games, extended lore, and comics, many of which are truly massive and terrifying. The Cultists of Leafy. Another disturbing xenomorph hybrids are the Cultists of Leafy from the video game Alien Dark Descent. On a distant moon, Leafy, the fanatic Darwin-era cultists rigged their own bodies with a device called embryostasis, a transparent chest chamber that slows facehugger gestation. Sometimes hosts develop xenomorph-like textures and can even communicate with xenomorphs. Each cultist willingly lets a facehugger latch on, then surgeons slide the still-living parasite into the chamber, therefore suspending its life cycle so the host can walk among xenomorphs unharmed and pregnant in waiting. The cult treats these captive facehuggers as holy relics, believing that the eventual chest bursting will rebirth them as angels. Eloise. Another human xenomorph hybrid is Eloise, which is a lab-grown hybrid created by Dr. Fred Lichtner. Lichtner infected a xenomorph egg with a biocomputer virus, prompting it to develop as a humanoid android instead of a xenomorph. Eloise is pale, acid-blooded, and endowed with queen DNA that grants her superhuman strength, claws, and psychic link to nearby aliens. She has distinct alien textures and formations on her arms and back, which reflects her xenomorph DNA. The Xenomorph King. The Xenomorph King is a rare male royal caste that functions as the queen's physical counterpart and heavy enforcer rather than a breeder. It was first introduced in Kenner's 1994 Aliens toy line and later reimagined as a 20-inch sideshow maquette. Physically, the king stands taller than a warrior but on par with a queen, exchanging the traditional crown for double gigantic horn mandibles that drive forward when it attacks. Hivelore describes him as a frontline guardian who rallies xenomorphs during large-scale battles, protects the egg chambers, and if a queen is absent, temporarily commands the hive through pheromonal pulses. Unlike queens, he neither produces eggs nor carries an ovipositor. However, some sources suggest that he fertilizes or defends multiple queens during hive wars, while others cast him as a one-off mutation that emerges only when resources allow for such a costly protector. Although never seen in film, the king's consistent design clues, a ridged, broad chest, heavy tail, and a more upright muscular stance have made him an enduring what-if archetype in expanded universe lore and collectibles. The second largest xenomorph is the Apocalypse Xenomorph. The Apocalypse Xenomorph is a colossal variant birthed from a space jockey host. In Alien of 1979, we see the pilot's fossilized suit ruptured from the inside, but the creature responsible is never shown. However, the comic book Aliens Apocalypse imagines this missing horror. An ancient and giant space jockey falls victim to a facehugger, producing a colossal Apocalypse Xenomorph about 8 times larger than a classic Xenomorph. This giant alien goes on a rampage, tearing apart other Xenomorphs and androids in a blind fury. The Fossilized Jockey Xenomorph. A handheld game introduced another space jockey offspring, a yellow, fossilized Xenomorph who matches the pilot's bone-like coloring. Smaller than the Apocalypse giant, yet still far larger than human-born drones, this version features an elongated trunk-like snout, reminiscent of the jockey's breathing apparatus, underscoring how host anatomy can dramatically reshape Xenomorph's morphology. Another interesting variant from the comics is the Rogue. The Rogue is a human Xenomorph hybrid created in a lab to be a domesticated equivalent of an alien queen that could obey the human commands and control other Xenomorphs. The Rogue was larger than a queen and born to rival her. It had a massive build and aggressive temperament. When it confronted an alien queen, the queen outsmarted and defeated it, demonstrating the hive's natural hierarchy couldn't be usurped. The White Hybrid. The White Hybrid is a xenomorph type from the comics created by a malfunctioned AI that combined DNA of humans, xenomorphs, and Yautja. White hybrids possess a high level of intelligence and the usage of tools and weapons. The White hybrids were even capable of communication. Their leader, the so-called Hybrid King, was an especially large specimen that could speak human language and coordinate others. The Wraith. In Dark Horse Comics, Weyland-Yutani scientists created the Wraith Xenomorph, a purpose-built stealth assassin. The creature's milky white, semi-translucent skeleton diffuses light, letting it blur into its surroundings and fool standard motion trackers. The experiment ends in disaster when the Wraith escapes confinement and methodically kills out the entire research team. The Aquatic Xenomorphs. On the planet Braken's world, Marines encounter a hive of water-adapted Xenomorphs. These aliens have eel-like or sea serpent adaptations. They possess no legs, instead having a long tail that ends in a broad, bladed-like spike, enabling swift swimming. The Marines speculate that facehuggers infected some indigenous aquatic life form, resulting in this unusual variant. This environmental adaptation is similar to the subterranean xenomorphs who live under surface and are able to dig underground tunnels. The Berserker. The Berserker alien is a xenomorph spawned from a super predator, which makes this Predelian one of the most hostile xenomorph types with extreme strength and durability. The albino drone. Nicknamed 7, the albino drone hatched in 2202 at Weyland-Yutani's clandestine palace station on LV-895. 7 is the result of researchers injecting both its egg and human host with the black goo pathogen. The treatment yielded a translucent, bone-white super drone whose heightened intelligence let it radiate low-level psychic commands, rallying every captive xenomorph and other black goo mutants like Leon 895. 7's influence first manifested as a mental buzzing felt by Dr. Mark Cruz, then escalated during a station-wide breach. The albino drone coordinated a mass breakout, rounded up humans for implantation, and sabotaged power nodes to cloak the hive in darkness. Another strange variant is the biodrone. The biodrone is a genetically engineered, short-lived xenomorph variant from the novel Alien Enemy of My Enemy. These biodrones were created under a secret military program as disposable bioweapons. Biodrones were smaller and faster than normal xenomorphs with an unusually high aggression level, to the point that they would even attack normal xenomorphs on sight. Now we get to alien games that feature a few interesting variants. The Alien Dragon. In Alien's Extermination video game, the final boss is the Alien Dragon, which is an airborne xenomorph with a huge wingspan, barded tail, and a flaring crest. In the game, it flies over LV-426 atmosphere processors, spits acid, and releases flying chestbursters. Players must blast its armored chest plates when they briefly open. The Giant Xenomorph. In Aliens Armageddon, there is a 20-foot quadrupedal behemoth resembling an oversized crusher with heavy skull plating. It smashes vehicles, swipes helicopters, and creates tail shockwaves. Lore also calls it Cataclysmic Morph because it was born from an implanted megafauna host accelerated by extreme cold. The Flying Queen. Aliens Armageddon is truly an amazing game, and it features another flying xenomorph creature, the Flying Queen, which looks extremely terrifying. The Flying Queen likely spawned from another megafauna animal. The creature is roughly 50 feet tall, its enormous wings make it both massive and absolutely terrifying. A flying xenomorph is a brilliant yet still unused concept that would be amazing to see on the big screen, and I really hope we'll eventually see it now that more movies and shows are being released in the franchise. The Titan Xenomorph. However, one of the largest xenomorphs ever recorded is the Titan Xenomorph from Aliens Dark Descent. In the game, colonial marines investigate the buried engineer city on the distant moon Leafy and discover the fossilized remains of an ancient citizen. A 15-meter tall space jockey giant biomechanically fused with the wall. From the city tunnels then emerges an equally giant xenomorph. The Titan rises to nearly 70 feet, its lower limbs fuse to its torso, so it has to drag all its bulk with giant forearms. Just like the ancient citizen engineer did not have lower limbs, the spawned xenomorph also is lacking fully developed legs. However, it has a sprawling head crest, layered armor plating, and a telescoping inner jaw, making conventional weapons completely useless. But because the Titan Xenomorph moves rather slowly on its forelimbs, the creature's turning radius is limited. giving the Marines just enough time to flee before the nuclear blast destroys the city and buries the Titan. The Xenoborg. The Xenoborg is a cybernetic xenomorph created via human experimentation that appears in the 1999 Aliens vs Predator game. The Xenoborg is essentially a xenomorph that has been captured and augmented with mechanical parts, turning it into a cyborg guard unit. These monstrosities are mostly mobile with very limited intelligence, often anchored to a location as defensive turrets. The hybrid, also referred to as the Beast, is a human xenomorph variant with some humanoid features that appears in the comic book adaptation of Alien 3 unproduced script. The Vampirella Xenomorph. In the Aliens Vampirella crossover, a xenomorph gestated in the vampire heroine Vampirella and inherited vampiric traits, emerging with a pair of bat-like wings and the ability to fly. Lastly, I'm going to explain really unusual non-canon xenomorph types that appear in crossovers with other franchises. Arkham Asylum Xenomorphs. In Batman Aliens crossover comic book, a rogue scientist splices DNA from Gotham's villains with xenomorph embryonic tissue. This results in a few xenomorph hybrids like Killer Croc Xenomorph, the Joker Xenomorph, and Harvey Dent Xenomorph. There also exists the Tarkatan Xenomorph from Mortal Kombat game. The Dark Alien is a xenomorph demon from Witchblade crossover. The Fire Eater alien from Wildcat Comics crossover that has an ability to breathe and spit fire. Operation Alien combat game features the Three-Headed Alien, a xenomorph type of unknown origin that has 3 independent heads and extremely distinct coloring. Finally, to fully complete the list of all known xenomorphs, I'm going to briefly mention different variants from the 1990 arcade game. The Chrysalis, a Predelian hybrid, the Defender, the Egg-shaped alien, the Star-faced alien, the Electric alien, the Infectoid, the Razor Claws, the Smasher, the Armored Xenomorph, the Walled alien, the Long-neck alien, the Arachnoid, and the Winged Xenomorph Head, which is probably the weirdest and the most goofy xenomorph type. Thank you guys for watching. It's truly amazing how many xenomorph types are out there in the franchise with unique backstories and traits. But what are your favorite xenomorph types, and did I miss any variants or hybrids? Leave your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to join the Patreon for extra support. Also, like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to the channel for more content. My name is Croft and I'll see you in the next video.